The rain was coming down in thin needle, like lines when 18-year-old Elise Parker stepped out of the rideshare and faced the long, narrow house at the end of Briar Lane. It was taller than the surrounding homes, with an attic window that seemed to stare down at her like a half-closed eye. She pulled her jacket close, glanced at the message from Mrs. Dalton, and stepped onto the porch. The door opened before she knocked. Mrs. Dalton, mid-40s, tremor in her smile, ushered her inside quickly, as though she didn't want the house open to the night air for more than a breath. "Thank you so much for coming on short notice," she said while grabbing her coat. "Eli already had dinner. Just keep him in bed. He sleepwalks sometimes." "Sleepwalks," Elise repeated. Mrs. Dalton forced a laugh that didn't quite land. "Oh, nothing dramatic. Just if you hear footsteps, check his room before you panic. Everything's locked anyway." But her eyes flicked upward, to the attic, when she said it. Before Elise could ask anything else, Mrs. Dalton slipped out into the rain, leaving Elise alone in the echoing house with the quiet hum of the furnace and a feeling she couldn't shake. This house was watching her. Eli Dalton, 7 years old with a shock of brown hair and large, cautious eyes, sat on the edge of his bed when Elise went upstairs to check on him. He wasn't scared, but he wasn't relaxed either. He watched the hallway behind her more than he watched her. "Elise," he whispered, "do you hear him yet?" As she froze. "Hear who?" "The man in the attic." But Elise's heart thumped. "Your mom said you sleepwalk. Is that where you go?" "The attic." The boy shook his head quickly, violently. "No, that's where he goes. Mom says he's not real. But I hear him walk around every night. He whispers my name. Yesterday he came down the stairs." "Elijah," she whispered, "that's not funny." He looked up at her with those two grown, too aware eyes. "I didn't say it to be funny." She tucked him in, turned off the light, and stepped into the hall. But before closing the door, Eli added in a trembling voice, "If you hear the attic door creaking, don't open it." The door clicked shut. Elise wandered the first floor for a while, trying to distract herself with the glow of her phone. But every few minutes, she glanced up at the ceiling. The house had an old frame. Old houses groaned and shifted. Creaks meant nothing, at least, that's what she told herself. But around 9:47 p.m. she heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, directly above the living room. Her first instinct was to jump to her feet, but she stayed still, listening. The footsteps weren't random. They were pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. A heavy weight, not a child's. Her pulse hammered. She crept toward the stairwell, craning her neck upward. The attic entrance was at the very top of the house, up a narrow third staircase past the bedrooms. She swallowed, telling herself it had to be the furnace. Or old pipes, something normal. But then she heard something else, a whisper. "Elijah," her blood iced. She ran straight to the boy's room, threw open the door. He was asleep, or pretending to be, curled fetal, shaking slightly under the blanket. "Elise," he whispered, not opening his eyes, "who's awake?" By 10:30 p.m., the house had fallen silent again. Elise sat outside Eli's door, hugging her knees. She had texted Mrs. Dalton twice with a casual, "Everything okay?" No answer. When the quiet broke, it broke softly, too softly. A small click, then a long, complaining creak. The attic door. Her breath hitched as she stepped into the hall. At the far end of the corridor, past Eli's room, past the guest bathroom, past the dusty framed paintings, she could see it. The attic door was not fully shut anymore. It hung crooked on its frame, open just an inch. Someone had opened it. "Elijah," she whispered, though she knew it wasn't him. She tiptoed toward it. Each step made the hall narrower, darker. Shadows pooled around her feet like ink. She stopped an arm's length away, staring into that terrifying sliver of blackness. A cold draft breathed down the stairs. Then, something moved behind the door. A shift in the darkness. Skin against wood. A slow inhalation. She staggered back, and the door creaked again, opening a little wider. She didn't wait. She ran back to Eli's room, closed the door, locked it, shoved a chair under the knob, and pressed her ear to the wood. On the other side of the house, from the attic, footsteps began descending. The footsteps were wrong. Not rhythmic like a person walking, more like something dragging a weight, like someone using their hands on the walls to steady themselves. A scraping, then a thud. Scrape, thud. They reached the second floor corridor. Elise held her breath, clamping a hand over her mouth, Ally clutched her other hand, eyes wide awake now, silently shaking. The footsteps approached the door, stopped. Then came a faint, wet breathing sound, like someone trying to inhale through a damaged throat. Aaliyah, the voice rasped through the door. Alyssa's eyes watered in terror. That wasn't a sleepwalker. That wasn't a prank. That wasn't even human. The knob twitched, then twisted, then rattled with sudden force. The chair under the knob skidded half an inch. Eli whimpered. The creature, or stranger, on the other side of the door exhaled deeply, almost disappointed. Then it turned and dragged itself further down the hall. Why is he here? Elise whispered. The boy shook his head. He lives up there. Mom doesn't like to admit it. Who is he? He said. Eli swallowed hard. He said he used to live in my room. When the house fell silent again, Elise waited several minutes before she dared open the bedroom door. The hall was empty. But she knew now she couldn't just wait for Mrs. Dalton. Something was horribly wrong. She searched the house, carefully, listening at every corner. In the parents' bedroom she found something, a leather-bound journal with the spine cracked from use. Mrs. Dalton's handwriting filled the pages in cramped, panicked lines. He's still up there. The house was supposed to be cleared. They lied. We hear him every night. Then she flipped to a page with a date circled in red. He came down the stairs again. Her throat closed. She flipped further. Eli says he spoke to him. He says he remembers the attic. Another page. We can't move. We can't sell. Every time someone tries to take him away, he comes back. Then the last entry. Don't open the attic door. Not until he's fed. Elise's stomach lurched. Fed. A loud thump echoed from upstairs. The attic. She had to know. If something was living in the house, something dangerous, she needed answers. Eli wouldn't leave until his mother returned. And the creature was between them and the front door. So Elise climbed the stairs toward the attic, flashlight trembling in her shaking grip. The attic door hung open now, yawning like a broken jaw. She pushed it with a fingertip. It opened without resistance. The attic smelled like mold, rust, and something sweetly rotten. She swept her light around. Old furniture, boxes, a rusted child's bed frame, scratches on the wooden floor, deep grooves like fingernails dragged across the boards. Then she saw it. In the corner of the attic, beneath the slanted ceiling, was a small mattress. On it lay scraps of food, rotting fruit, half-eaten meat, old sandwich crusts. Someone had been feeding something. Elise stepped closer. Then she saw the crayon drawings tacked to the wall, drawn with shaky hands. A child's drawings. A stick-figure boy in a bedroom. A mother. A man with no face standing in the corner. She stared at them. The oldest drawings were signed in the corner with a scrawled name, Elliot Dalton, 2014. Elise froze. Eli was born in 2017. Whoever drew these, he died years ago. A floorboard behind her creaked. She turned slowly, breath freezing in her chest. In the darkness of the attic doorway, something was standing. Tall, thin, head tilted wrong, like it was studying her with childlike curiosity. And in the dim beam of her flashlight she saw its face, or lack of one. Pale skin stretched tight across bone. Hollow sockets where eyes should be. A mouth like torn paper stitched back together. It took one trembling, jerky step toward her. Aaliyah, it whispered. Elise ran. The creature scrambled after her, movements disjointed and too fast. She dove down the stairs, slamming the attic door shut behind her. It hit the wood with sickening force. The door bowed inward, hinges whining. She sprinted to Eli's room. "We need to go," she hissed, yanking the terrified boy from his bed. They reached the main floor just as the attic door exploded open with a splintering crack upstairs. Heavy footsteps pounded down after them. The front door was only a few feet away. Elise grabbed the knob. It wouldn't turn, bolted from the outside. She cursed, dragging Illy toward the kitchen. There had to be another exit. Glass shattered upstairs. The creature leapt over the railing, landing in a broken crouch, bones snapping audibly as it straightened. Elise put herself between it and the boy. "Stay behind me." The creature tilted its head, as if confused or amused, and whispered in a warped, childlike voice, "Wrong one." Then its hollow eyes fixed on Eli. The creature lunged. A deafening bang shook the house. Then another, and another. The front door burst open. Mrs. Dalton stood there, drenched in rain, shotgun in hand, face twisted in terror and familiarity. "Jetiawa from Waisao," she screamed. The creature turned toward her, and for a moment, Elise saw something impossible. The creature flinched, like a child afraid of punishment. Mrs. Dalton fired. The creature collapsed backward with an unearthly howl, limbs flailing, dragging itself toward the stairs. Eli sobbed as his mother scooped him into her arms. "Elise," Mrs. Dalton gasped. "I told you not to open the attic." "I didn't," Elise cried. "It came out on its own." Mrs. Dalton's expression broke into something like grief, mixed with resignation. "No," she whispered. "It always comes out when it's hungry." The creature let out a shrill, choking cry as it writhed on the steps. Mrs. Dalton aimed again. "Elise," she said softly, without looking at her, "take Eli outside. Don't look back." Elise pulled the boy into her arms and moved toward the open door as Mrs. Dalton stepped forward, shotgun aimed at the thing her family had been living with for years. Just before Elise crossed the threshold, she heard the creature say in a wet, trembling mumble, "Ma." Then a shot shattered the moment. Elise carried Eli through the rain to the other side of the street, both shaking uncontrollably. She held him close as he cried into her shoulder. The house stood silently across from them, windows flickering with light and shadow. Minutes passed. Then Mrs. Dalton emerged, pale, shaking, face streaked with rain, or tears. She didn't speak. She simply sat on the curb, staring at the house like it had betrayed her. Elise whispered, What was that thing?" Mrs. Dalton didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she said, "He was my first son." And Elise's stomach turned cold. "He was sick," Mrs. Dalton continued. "Very sick. Doctors couldn't explain what happened to him. His bones twisted. His skin changed. His mind broke. We tried to hide him, protect him. Then one night her voice cracked. He died." Eli whimpered, burying his face deeper into Elise's chest. Mrs. Dalton stared hollowly at the attic window. But he didn't stay dead. The attic window trembled. Something inside shifted. "Elise," she whispered, horrified realization spreading across her face, "is not gone." Elise looked up. The attic window slowly pushed open from the inside. A pale, slender hand curled around the wooden frame, and a dragging whisper stretched across the street, "Elijah."